iPhone?
There we go.
There you go.
This is the best we got.
One of the photographers in town uses an iPhone to take photos sometimes.
Well, the cameras on the iPhones are they're really good
They're
now.
really good, yeah. So no worries.
It'll be what it'll be. Here we go.
Being reasonably close.
Okay.
I played the track earlier.
Which one? Oh, Fire.
Yeah.
Oh, you've got my whole CD too.
Was your older one?
It is, but it's the I'm still recording my next one. So
I like Fire, so I've been playing that.
cool. Thank you. Here it is.
Yeah. Listen, a lot of DJs don't know what to do with CDs anymore.
Wow.
Bring in their laptops and plug them in and away they go.
And yet people still tell us to make them.
Well, yeah, there's still a lot. There's some who only use CDs. And there's others. One of our older DJs had to put all the CDs onto a laptop because he couldn't play. Why has that stopped? Hey, you're listening to the morning show here on Raglan Community Radio. I don't know why that stopped there, but we might as well take this opportunity to start talking. In the studio, I've got Amy from Parabola West. Good morning, Amy.
Good morning.
And you're up to something new at the moment in the way of home concerts. But before we want to talk about that, I want to just ask. Actually, the first thing we should always do is tell people why you're called Parabola West. Because you're not a band; it's just you.
No, it's Parabola West is my performance or stage name.
Yep.
And so I came up with that because I'm very interested in solar power, and I was creating a parabolic solar heater, and I started getting very fascinated by it. So it kind of became a nickname, and it stuck, and it's my stage name, yeah. And West
Excellent.
is because I'm married to Mr. West.
Oh right, that's right. I was trying to figure out because it said somewhere on your website you're from the east coast of the US originally.
I am, yeah, but I married a guy whose surname is West, so
there we go.
So it's Parabola West.
Right, it could have been a lot worse if his name had been something else, but we won't go there.
Could have been, yeah.
So we talked to when did we talk to you last year? You just made the video, making the video for Fire, which is a track we played earlier.
Yeah, so that would have been in October. It was in August. We did the video in Raglan.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we released that track, and that was great. So I was doing a bit of promotion for the video, and it's gone really well. It's got something like almost 20,000 hits on it so far. So
yeah. So what were you expecting? Did you have, or were you just kind of putting it out there and kind of hoping?
Well, with the competition that I had won, that was sponsored by New Zealand On Air, I was able to make the video. So the video was paid for by the winnings of that competition.
Yeah.
And so really, I was just expecting to put something out there that was going to be visually spectacular, and that would be something I couldn't have afforded to do anyway, without that. So it was a great opportunity, and I got to work with some really cool people and showcase Raglan, which is beautiful.
Yeah. And you also, you've been on like TV and a few other shows that are a slightly larger audience than I do. How was that as an experience?
Well, I feel very fancy now, of course,
Yeah. Bigger than Raglan Community Radio.
Yeah. No, it's great. I think any opportunity to get out there and promote what I'm trying to achieve is cool. But when you're trying to get your music out there and your story out, it's great when anybody is interested.
Yeah. And so is the track Fire, is that going to be part of an album or an EP or?
The track Fire is going to be part of the album that I'm in the process of doing now. So I get into the studio in June.
Yeah.
I'm doing some pre-production now, which is a very important process.
Is it? I wouldn't know. I thought people just went in and played and sang.
I think some people do. If you can afford to kind of go in and figure it out whilst you're paying for studio time, then that's great.
That's all good, but you
I can't, so I have to do all of the sort of pre-production work, which is all the arrangement and sort of figuring out exactly what will happen and how things should sound to a certain degree. There has to be some spontaneity.
So are you trying to do that at home on your own computer and putting music in?
Yeah, a little bit, but I'm working with a guy named Ben King and as a producer in Auckland. Are you familiar with Golden Horse?
Yes.
So he's from that. He was one of the forming members of that band, and he does some great production work. So yeah, we've been exchanging ideas. And I've gone to his home studio and cut the demos, and so all those sorts of things.
Music's not where I'm. That's something I do.
That's all right.
So the whole process, kind of interesting, like the whole pre-production.
It is.
You could could you obsess about it and get really carried away trying to plan every detail?
Absolutely.
Right.
And it never goes to plan, so you can obsess all you like, and it will always end up being a little bit crazy and spontaneous.
Well, that's probably, and you probably want that really. You don't want it to be totally pinned down.
I think it has to be a good mix.
Yeah.
Because you don't want it to sound too formulaic.
Yeah.
Because there are certain things that come out in inspirational moments, and you really want to capture that, but at the same time, you can't just sort of let it run away, because then time's ticking and you have to rein it in.
Yeah. And so have you been playing live as well over the last few months?
Yeah, I've been playing pretty much as often as I can within reason, but the home concerts are my favorite way of performing, and so I'm really trying to do more of those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I've had other people in who say they really enjoy the kind of small, intimate nature of this sort of thing. So is that what you're into?
Yeah. So I mean, as a singer-songwriter, and that the fact that I perform my original music, I really love an opportunity to tell the stories about the songs and chat with the people. And a small audience is a great way to kind of get exposed for the first time to new music, I find.
Yeah.
I don't really enjoy hearing someone for the first time in a kind of a loud, kind of lousy environment where the sound's a bit off and
like a booze hall.
Correct. That's not really where like my music sits.
Yeah.
Well, so I just find that kind of being in a group of kind of interested people who love music in an environment that's safe and familiar to them, you kind of get the best out of them.
No need for a bouncer on the door or anything.
Ideally not, yeah.
No,
yeah.
You don't want to be at a house that needs a bouncer.
No.
Fair enough.
No.
So you've done some of these home concerts recently?
Yeah.
Have you done some in Raglan or out of town?
I haven't done any in Raglan. The first time I did home concerts was last year on my tour. And I was finding that I had venues booked on the weekends, but not a lot in the middle of the week.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to find people's houses to do little concerts in, and I loved it. I thought, oh, these are the best shows of the whole tour. So it kind of stuck in my mind, and I thought, why don't I do more of these? This is a great way to get your music out there, and get more people interested and excited about what you're doing.
Yeah. I guess when you've got a big show and a big audience, you've kind of got to keep the party moving. But with a small crowd, you can stop and talk. Do people interact? Do they ask questions?
Yeah,
or?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's great. People want to know what the songs are about, and they, something from a song, because they're really listening. And so people come up afterwards and tell me stories about their life, and you really make connections when you do it that way that you just can't so much do in an environment like that. And there aren't a lot of venues in New Zealand that I've discovered that are where people go just for the music.
Yeah.
Music is often the thing happening in the background. You're not really paying attention. You're sort of there for something else.
Yeah. How does that feel as a performer, being the oral wallpaper?
It doesn't get the best out of me, but I'm not really a covers gig kind of person. So I'm sort of bearing my soul out there, with stories from my life and people that have inspired me. So I kind of like to be the center of attention.
Fair enough. You got into all that trouble.
I suppose, yeah.
I know. I've talked to some classical musicians who like to do the home concerts as well, and there's a poster up on the wall there for Bend, who's some musicians who've been in New Zealand for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if you saw that. I didn't go to it, but it sounded like a really interesting gig. They were at the Garden Bar over at the hotel.
Yeah, I saw it being set up. Yeah.
Lots of stories to go with the music, and I really enjoy that. I like to know what's going on around the music.
I think,
especially as someone who doesn't make music and doesn't really get how that happens.
Well, I mean, I make music, and I love going to smaller shows where people tell those stories, and you get an insight into a person rather than just a song, or it's a much more interactive way to experience music. I find I love it, so I want to do more of it. Yeah. And
I imagine that the people who would have a house concert would be fairly well off, and you might get to see some pretty fancy homes.
Well, you might think that, but it's actually not necessarily the case. I have done home concerts in houses that were pretty fancy, but I've done home concerts in places where it was just people who love music who were able to make some space in their lounge and get some friends around, and
Right.
it doesn't matter. It's great because I sort of charge the concerts out in set package fees,
Yeah.
and so people will either cover the cost of that themselves or they'll just ask for donations from their friends. And if you get 20 people along and they're all bringing a $5 or a $10 each, you know, you've covered your costs, and it's
Yeah.
pretty.
And how does that compare with if you did a gig at a pub or somewhere, payment wise? Is it?
Well, that's the thing, is it varies so much that it's kind of difficult to plan your cash flow.
Yep. Yes. Yeah.
And because they're usually only on a Friday or a Saturday or a Sunday or something like that, so it varies a lot. I mean, not some places pay really well, and some are terrible. I won't name and shame.
Oh, good.
But-
Yeah. We might get in trouble here.
Yeah, but I mean, so it's hard to know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was going to ask, because you're from the US, do you sometimes wish you were there, where it might be easier to make a living playing music, because there's a much more substantial audience?
I have to admit that I very rarely wish that I was there. Having lived in New Zealand since 2003, and
Yeah.
especially in the current political climate,
Yeah.
which I don't necessarily think I should talk about.
No, we won't
But-
get into that. Though. That's a different
But
interview.
I very rarely wish that I was there. Yeah.
Okay. But even for, I mean, is it easier? I mean, there's more people, but presumably there's more musicians as well.
Yeah, I guess if my primary goal was just to make as much money as I could, and that was the only factor, then sure, the US would be the place to do it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's not, the cost-benefit analysis of that formula doesn't work in the favor. I love it here.
Yeah.
It's so much more my style.
I mean, is it easy? I don't know if it's possible to be a musician, be an artist, and your main focus is money anyway. Doesn't that just create a huge internal conflict?
I think it would be quite soul-destroying, yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to have the ability to sustainably earn a living,
Of course. Yeah.
but you don't. I don't really kind of operate in the world where excess is something that I enjoy tremendously. So, yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
I think it would be very difficult to still be creatively inspired and passionate if you were just chasing the dollars.
Yeah. Yeah. It's probably actually really good to be poor and have a stressful life. It gives you.
It gives you material.
It gives you material. Yeah.
You ever notice that once that first album comes out and the band starts getting really successful, it's usually that next one where the songs are not quite as good because they're sort of they've used up all their angst, and now they've got everything they ever wanted, and they don't know what to write about.
And and all they've got is happy experiences.
Yeah, nobody's interested in how hard your life is now that you're rich, you know?
Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah. No one's going to believe that for a minute.
No one's really feeling like that tells their story.
I guess there is a skill in writing songs that are actually happy songs, and making them good rather than kind of trite. Is that a hard thing to do?
It is really difficult, and I sometimes get feedback that people say, gosh, you know, you seem so upbeat and happy in person, but your songs are always so sad. And I think, well, I kind of get it out that way in the music, and then I can kind of get on with my life and be quite happy, because
that's good.
Yeah, so it is quite it's hard for me to write happy songs. I've
Yeah.
got a few, but there's always a little bit of melancholy in there.
Fair enough. So when you do the house concert, like obviously you're an individual artist, but you've got backing music. So in home concert, how does that work?
Well, I perform it all live on my keyboard.
Okay.
And yeah, the home concert thing, I don't use backing tracks or anything like that. Some people do, but it's not really for me.
It
So
must
I just
really
do.
pin you down in terms of you can't go with the moment or anything like that. Go with the flow.
Oh, with backing tracks?
Yeah.
I think so. My timing is always different, and sometimes I'll just stop in the middle of something if an idea pops in my head, and I'll say it, and then so it kind of just, I haven't really found the art of doing that within the constraints of a track. But yeah, so I bring a full PA and lighting and kind of set it all up and make it look and sound beautiful.
Yes. Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about, is it going to sound terrible or any of those things. It won't. It'll sound great.
Okay.
and then it all gets packed down at the end and disappears, and your sort of house is left exactly as we found it.
Well, that sounds good.
Yeah, from a host perspective, all you really need to worry about is providing enough space and invite your friends around, and I take care of the rest.
How much space is enough space?
It depends on how many people. I think 20 is a good number, and any more than that, and it's a little bit much, it stops becoming that kind of quiet, intimate environment.
That'll be a fairly sizable lounge anyway, with 20 people and you and your equipment.
Yeah, well, I'm on a keyboard, and it's just me sat there, and then the PA is kind of surrounding.
Yeah. So you don't take up a lot of space.
It's not a huge amount of space, and then people kind of get right close in, which is nice.
Right, you don't and your face is not an issue?
Oh, I love it, because you can see people's expressions, and you can also kind of read the mood and figure out, I think maybe this song should come up next, or it's very spontaneous.
What if you can read the mood and they're not happy?
Well, if you can read the mood and they're not happy, then you need to switch it up and do something better. I mean, I haven't had that experience.
That's good to hear. Actually, I do enjoy to hear about the bad experiences. I talked to a comedian last year who was at the Raglan Club, and I said, "Tell me about a really bad gig you had." And he said there was he was somewhere in the Waikato, and he was making a joke about Huntly, and it wasn't in Huntly, but it turned out there was a guy in the audience from Huntly who didn't like it, and he had a knife.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's a bad experience.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That was a good one too.
Yeah.
Kind of a funny bad experience. More material for him.
I have never...
never been threatened with a knife?
I have never been threatened with a knife. It's not really my music, doesn't really kind of...
That goes with the booze barns, really.
It does.
Again.
I've had some weird experiences with very inebriated people, but which is kind of one of the reasons why I like doing these types of concerts.
Yeah.
I've had some pretty whack gigs, for sure, but
because you've played in bands in the past and things like this.
Yeah, I've played in bands in the past, and I like doing the solo thing because I have control over everything, and maybe that's why I don't so much like the backing track side.
Yeah, the reason I'm kind of asking this is I think most people would I would be terrified of things going wrong, and what do you do if the audience isn't into it? And I know you've got heaps of experience, and you probably know how to read the audience and all that kind of thing, but that's still, I think, for the rest of us, that's kind of be a big fear.
It is, and especially the first few times you get out there, and it's just that fear, and getting through it is just part of paying your dues, really.
Yeah.
That's you just have to walk through that fear and do it anyway, and have bad experiences, and people leave, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it is what it is.
And I guess when you start out, if you're like the support act or something, people might well get up and go, or just be disinterested, or... Well,
being a support act is quite nice because you don't have any of the pressure of drawing the crowd.
True.
And they're already there invested in the next thing that's going to happen, so they're probably going to stick around.
Yeah, they paid their money, so...
Yeah, so being a support act is actually quite nice.
Okay. Also, I have to compare this with being a DJ. Like, there is an audience, and I could be doing things that making them turn off, but I don't actually know.
You never know, yeah.
Yeah, and it's a really weird thing. When I first started, I was really nervous too, but after about 4 shows, I realised it's just me in a room by myself.
Yeah. Well, it's whatever your mind tells you it means.
Yeah.
So, if I were thinking, gosh, if this person doesn't like my music right now, my career is over, and I'm worthless, and nothing about me is good, then it would be terrifying. But I'm mostly doing this to please myself. So.
Well, that's where the best music comes from anyway. The best performances. If the musician's not happy, I can't see how it could work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember years ago I used to flat with a couple of guys who were musicians, and I often got impromptu house concerts myself.
And
which
did
was
you enjoy it?
I loved it because they were jamming and they were just totally into the music, not worried about and just doing it for themselves, and it was really awesome. I enjoyed it better than their live gigs.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, maybe because they were just, you got that really genuine experience when they weren't performing, they were just being.
Yeah. I really
That's
loved
a real
that.
art, isn't it? Trying to have the showmanship, but also the integrity of the moment.
Well, I mean, there is a place for showmanship, especially with
Yeah.
the larger the gig. I think the further away the crowd is, the more you need to do to make
Sure.
them know you're there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, have you performed to like large, substantial crowds?
Not large crowds, no. I mean, I think that will come in time, but that's not something that I've got experience with. But I think almost a larger crowd would be less intimidating than a small group where people are right in your face, because
Oh, yeah.
you can't really, even in venues where you can't see their faces, like you don't know, it's just a bunch of lights happening,
Yes, of course.
and
yeah.
you can't really tell what's going on. So you're very much in your own bubble of performance, and you're sort of interacting with dark space, which is
Well, it's weird because I've been on the other side of the lights. It doesn't feel like that at all. Of course. Like,
Yeah.
The band's right there.
yeah, it's all performances have their ups and downs.
Do you take requests at these home concerts?
Well, I don't do a lot of covers, so unless they're requesting one of my songs, it's hard.
Okay,
for
yeah,
me.
Well, they might be.
They might.
Huge
I
fans.
do sometimes get requests of songs that aren't in the set list of people that have been to see me a few times.
Well, if
I'll
they
always
look,
oblige.
like I've got the website here, which is homeconcerts.co.nz,
Yes.
and people can hook into your bio and preview music, so
Yeah.
they actually could listen to what you might be playing.
It would
and-
be a great idea to see whether or not it's the style of music you'd like to hear. Would that suit your friends and
Yeah.
that sort of thing? So yeah, you can check it all out. And
So that's what you're looking to do, and I'm sure you'd love to do some home concerts in Raglan.
I'd love to.
Would you be doing also? Actually, this would undermine it a little bit, wouldn't it? If I was going to say you're going to do a gig in one of the local venues.
Well, I guess one of the things I really wanted to make clear is that this is definitely not to negatively impact the venue side of things. Because really, home concerts, I'm going after the demographic of people who wouldn't go out
Yeah.
to a gig.
Yeah.
They don't like to go out to those environments, or they just are homebodies, that type of thing. So I'm trying to find a way to reach them.
Mm.
But gigs and venues, I love doing, still keen to do it, and would never want to turn something like that down if it was a good opportunity.
So presumably, you said before you're going to be in the studio in June,
Yeah.
was it? So sometime after that there'll be an album coming out, and then you'll be promoting that.
Yeah, that'll be, so the album should be released in August. That's the plan.
Okay, all going well.
All going well, yeah. And then I'm off to the States and the UK in September,
Okay.
and then back to New Zealand. So I'm kind of chasing the tail end of the warmth in America
yeah,
and the
yeah,
UK,
for sure.
and then I'll come back here and try to do some more promotion when it's warm here.
Yeah, that's what everyone does. There's not
Yeah.
a lot of winter activity except quiet gigs and
Yeah,
with a warm beer. Well, I don't know about the warm, but anyway.
depends on where you're from, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah. All right, well, look, Amy, thanks heaps for coming in. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been talking to Amy from Parabola West, who's a local musician, and we'll be playing her song a little bit here on the morning show. And yeah, it's all about the home concerts for you at the moment.
It's all about it. Thanks so much for
Is it?
having me.
No trouble. We'll see you next time.
Take care.
All right, folks, have I got a song lined up? I have. It's Mike Snow with Genghis Khan, and we've pretty much